At first he thought it was smoke. A black mass filled the lane behind him from hedge to hedge. Where it touched the trees, they vanished. Not broke, not burned. Vanished. He slammed his foot down hard on the accelerator. Bare left, the sat-nav said. Then sharp left. You could sound a bit more worried. The blackness touched the rear bumper. Then the trees ended. The BMW exploded from the woods and into light. Not daylight. Something else. Dark Margins presents Please Drive to Highlighted Route by Ian Hand. The last thing Kev sent Graham Banks was a link to a sat-nav app. Graham barely glanced at it. He was in a hurry, which was how Graham preferred the world to understand him. A man with somewhere to be. A man expected elsewhere. A man whose absence would be remarked upon. He stood in the bedroom of his Oxford house, with a phone clamped between shoulder and ear, throwing clothes into an open suitcase and making a performance of being late. Into the false bottom went several bags of white powder, covered carefully with matching fabric. On top went pressed shirts, polished black brogues, boxers and rolled charcoal socks, lined up like a brigade of tiny South American fascist soldiers. No, I haven't seen Kev. Not for a few days. Can't say I'm surprised. He's got the attention span of a chicken with ADHD. He listened, then grinned. Yeah, probably out driving that new Lamborghini of his. Yellow Huracan. And when I say yellow, I mean yellow. Like a midlife crisis dunked in custard. He laughed at that, because he was a bloody funny guy. No, honestly, don't worry. He'll be there. No way Kev would miss your nuptials. And I should be there around 1 or 2-ish. The voice on the other end objected. That's not late. That's fashionably late. There's a big difference. Graham laughed again. Not just because it was funny, but because he didn't like leaving silence for other people not to fill. Kev sent me a link yesterday, he said. Some new sat-nav app. All singing, all dancing, apparently. I'm not sure what else it can do except tell me where to go. Maybe make me a cup of tea in the morning. He listened. Exactly. What have I got to lose? Graham crossed to the wardrobe mirror. Early 40s. Tall. Still in decent shape. Good shirt. Good watch. Hair cut by someone who said things like product and texture with a straight face. He looked like the sort of man estate agents became if they discovered cocaine and boutique hotels. And congratulations again, he said, his voice changing before he could stop it. Charlie's a great guy. You're going to have a fantastic life together. He listened. No, I mean it. And he did. Graham wasn't cruel all the way through. He remembered birthdays, bought ridiculous presents, and had once driven through the night to collect Kev from a petrol station near Swindon after a deal went bad, and Kev was left without shoes and several teeth. He also lied for sport, sold things he shouldn't have sold, and had left more than one person feeling foolish for trusting him. People were rarely tidy. Graham ended the call and stood in the bedroom, trying to remember what he had forgotten. Aftershave. He opened the bedside drawer, sprayed his neck with something absurdly expensive, checked himself in the mirror, and winked. Never know when you're going to meet Mr. Right. The house gave no opinion. It was too quiet. Graham used to call that freedom. Lately, he had begun to notice how silence could sound like absence if you caught it at the wrong angle. He zipped the suitcase tightly. No point being stupid with this delivery. If it went well, he would be set up for the next year or more. At the bottom of the stairs, he stopped. Keys. He found them on the bedside table beside a small bag of white powder. Ah, what the hell. A good bump before a long drive. Graham tapped a little onto the back of his hand, leant in and snorted it. People talked about preparation as though it was all tire pressure, oil and coolant. Graham had his own system. The BMW waited on the drive, black, polished, and unpleasantly pleased with itself. Graham put the suitcase on the back seat where he could keep an eye on it, the holdall next to it, and the suit bag carefully laid on top. Graham got behind the wheel and opened Kev's message. The app page appeared. Sat-nav GPS, Maps and Route Planner, Chocho Corporation. Underneath that, Kev had added, "Try this, mate, different class." That was Kev all over. Everything was either different class or absolute bollocks. There was no middle ground. Restaurants, films, men, cars, watches, trainers, drugs, new ways of losing money. Different class or absolute bollocks. Graham had known him for nearly 20 years and still couldn't decide if Kev was one of life's great optimists or just dense as a breeze block. Possibly both. The logo on the sat-nav app was a white arrow on a black background, bent in the middle. It looked like a road sign after an accident. "Okay, Chocho Corporation," Graham said. "Show me what you've got." He tapped Install. The bar flashed straight to 100%. Not quickly, not efficiently, instantly. As if the app had not downloaded, but arrived. Graham frowned at it for half a second. Then the screen opened onto a perfectly normal map, and his frown disappeared. Roads, fields, blue lines, little grey shapes for towns, all the usual nonsense. That it? He typed in Dawlish and pressed start. A woman's voice spoke from the phone. "Good morning, Graham. Please drive to highlighted route. You should arrive at your destination in 2 hours and 58 minutes. The voice was not robotic. That would have been easier. It was warm, precise, and oddly intimate, like someone speaking from the next room in the house where he lived alone. Graham looked at the phone. "Well," he said, "good morning to you too." He should have wondered how it knew his name. He didn't. He put on his sunglasses, started the engine, and screeched away. For the first hour, the app was excellent. It took him out of Oxford, down towards the motorway, and then west with no fuss at all. It knew which lane he needed before he did. It warned him about delays before the signs did. It cut 3 minutes here, 7 minutes there. It even seemed to understand the rhythm of his driving. Too fast, too close, confident in the cowardice of other road users. By the time he reached the M5 near Brigstow, Graham trusted it. That was all it took. Trust, for Graham, had always been a practical matter. Did something make his life easier? Did it save time? Did it get him what he wanted? Then fine. Trust it until it failed. People, machines, friends, lovers, sat-nav apps. Same principle. He slid a thin spliff from a cigarette packet with one hand, held it between his lips, and flicked open his Zippo. It was old, heavy, silver. The sort of thing men bought themselves when they wanted to believe they had a signature object. The flame jumped. Graham drew it in, took a long drag, and dropped the lighter into the cup holder. The smoke sat in his lungs like a small, furry animal. "Mobile speed camera in operation," said the sat-nav. 200 yards. Graham glanced at the screen. "Is that right?" He eased off the accelerator. Ahead, half hidden in a lay-by, a police 4x4 waited with the lazy patience of a spider. Graham passed it at exactly 70. "Neat," he said. "Thank you. Anything else I should know about?" "Accident ahead. Lane closure. Congestion expected. In half a mile, take the slip road and leave the motorway at junction 20. There was nothing on the gantry signs. No warnings, no red crosses. But as Graham approached the junction, brake lights flared ahead in a long red smear. That's even more impressive. The police vehicle shot past along the hard shoulder, blue lights flashing. Graham indicated and took the slip road. "Stay in the left-hand lane," said the sat-nav. At the roundabout, take the second exit onto the B3133. Okay, Graham said. You're the boss. Graham followed the app away from the motorway and into smaller roads. The landscape became local in that particular West Country way. Hedges too high, lanes too narrow, fields opening suddenly where you didn't expect them, road signs that looked as if they had been there since rationing. A sign for Ken appeared, then vanished behind him. In a quarter of a mile, said the sat-nav, take the second turning on the left. Where are you taking me? Graham asked. The app did not answer. He took the turning. The lane narrowed almost at once. For the first few minutes, it was only mildly annoying. The sort of road that made a car like his feel overdressed. The hedges thickened into trees and joined overhead. Then the day began to change. Not suddenly. Suddenly would have been more honest. The light thinned by degrees. Green became darker. Shadows collected beneath branches. The road dipped. The air through the vents smelled damp, old, and faintly sweet, like leaves rotting in a churchyard. Graham took off his sunglasses. The phone chimed. GPS signal lost, said the sat-nav. Switching to offline mode. The map changed. All the normal colors vanished. No fields, no towns, no blue line. The screen became black, and through the black ran a single scarlet route. Graham looked at it too long. A branch struck the windscreen. What the fuck? He flinched and jerked the wheel. Another branch scraped the side of the BMW with a sound like a fork dragged across a plate. Bastard. The road was worse now. Potholes, mud, stones, tree roots pushing up through tarmac in ridges. The BMW bumped and slewed. Branches leaned too low and not randomly. They seemed to reach down. Something moved in the undergrowth. Graham caught only a glimpse. Pale, low, too many legs. It went from one patch of ferns to another and disappeared. Nope, Graham said. No, thank you. Another shape crossed ahead, then another. Small things and larger things, all moving away from the road with quick, jointed urgency. The woods were not empty. They were evacuating. Graham looked in the rearview mirror. At first he thought it was smoke. A black mass filled the lane behind him from hedge to hedge. It rolled forward into itself, boiling, thick as tar and quick as a storm. But smoke rises. Smoke spreads. This kept its shape. It moved with purpose. Where it touched the trees, they vanished. Not broke, not burned. Vanished. Graham stared at the mirror for perhaps 3 seconds, long enough for the blackness to come closer, long enough for his lizard brain to understand that if it reached him, there would not be pain or panic, but oblivion. There would simply be Graham, then no Graham. He slammed his foot down hard on the accelerator. The BMW leapt forward. A pothole hit the wheels like a bomb. The seatbelt locked across his chest. "Shitting hell!" Graham screamed. "Bear left," the sat-nav said. Then sharp left. "You could sound a bit more worried." The lane forked. Graham took the left too fast, clipped the earth bank, and skidded across the road. For one sickening second, the bonnet pointed directly at the trees. He corrected, overcorrected, corrected again. Behind him, the black mass filled the rear window. The speedometer touched 98. 98 miles an hour on a road that had probably never expected anything faster than a tractor or a herd of cows. Branches clawed at the car. The engine screamed. The phone sat calmly in its cradle, the scarlet line leading him on. The blackness touched the rear bumper, or seemed to. The dashboard flickered. The radio spat static. The whole car shuddered as if some giant hand had gripped it from behind. Then the trees ended. The BMW exploded from the woods and into light. Not daylight, something else. He looked in the mirror. The woods were still there behind him, but not any woods he knew. A dense black line of crooked trees under a darkening sky. At their edge, the black mass churned and folded against an invisible boundary, unable or unwilling to cross. Graham hit the brakes. The car slewed sideways, threw up black sand, and stopped at an angle on a narrow dirt road. For a while, he only breathed. Then he turned slowly to the view out of the windscreen. The world had gone wrong. That was the only phrase that came to him. A plain of black sand stretched ahead under a violet sun. The horizon seemed too low, too wide. The sky had a bruised color, like evening seen through old blood. Far away stood a city. Not a city in the useful sense. Not somewhere with traffic lights and takeaways and people complaining about parking. This was a city like a threat. Towers like broken teeth. Walls like ribs. Windows that caught the violet light and gave back nothing. The sat-nav spoke. Continue on unnamed road for 3 miles. Graham looked at the phone. The black screen showed the scarlet line ahead. Beside it, in small white letters, were the words, "The Unending Plane of Uth." Farther along, the scarlet route became blue and ended in a circle labeled, "The Accursed City of Guidar." Graham stared at the words until they began to look both ridiculous and inevitable. Someone's having a fucking laugh. He slapped himself across the face. Once, twice, hard enough to hurt. Nothing changed. The black sand hissed against the side of the car. The violet sun sank lower. Behind him, the thing in the woods waited. Graham put the BMW into gear. Guidar it is, then? The track across the plain was bad enough to make him wince every few yards. Ruts, stones, sudden dips that made the suspension crack. Sand gusted over the bonnet in dry black sheets. There were no birds, no insects, no wires overhead, no vapor trails across the sky, no signs of anything that lived by choice. After a while, Graham began to talk. He had always been good at talking. It filled space. It disguised fear. It made silence look like someone else's problem. All right, very clever. This is what, some weird augmented reality thing? Kev, if this is you, mate, this is beyond funny now. The app said nothing. I mean it, beyond funny. The road climbed a low rise. Something metallic glinted ahead, then something else, then many things. The sat-nav chimed. After 400 yards, continue on unnamed road. The rise fell away. Graham saw the crater. It was enormous, 1/2 mile across at least, with a jagged rim that dropped into a darkness he could not see. Around it, scattered along both sides of the track, were cars. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They lay there like every journey that had ever gone wrong. Family hatchbacks, vans, motorbikes, coaches, lorries, caravans, a red double-decker bus on its side with its windows blown out, a camper van split open like a tin of beans. Some vehicles were rusted almost to lace. Others looked newly arrived, their paint still shining under the violet light. Graham slowed to a crawl. He saw number plates from Britain, France, Spain, Germany. Others he didn't recognize. A child's car seat lay in the road. The straps were still fastened. Graham stopped talking. Then he saw the Lamborghini, bright yellow, parked near the lip of the crater, yellow like custard. yellow like a warning. "No," Graham said. He pulled up beside it and switched off the engine. For several seconds he stayed where he was. The phone glowed on the dashboard. Outside, the plane waited. "Kev?" His voice sounded thin inside the car. He wound the window down. "Kev? You there, mate?" Nothing. Graham opened the door and stepped out. The air was cold and dry. It tasted metallic, like blood from a bitten lip. He crossed to the Lamborghini. It was dusty, but undamaged. The driver's seat was empty. So was the footwell. Kev's sunglasses lay folded in the little space by the gear selector. One lens was cracked. Graham went around to the passenger side. On the seat was a present, wrapped in silver paper with 2 cartoon grooms on it, a neat bow on top. The tag said, "To Charlie and Dan, love Kev." Graham opened the passenger door. A smell came out. Not strong, not fresh. A damp, intestinal sort of smell, hiding under the stale ghost of Kev's aftershave. Graham backed away. This is fucking bizarre. It was an absurd thing to say, but people rarely become eloquent at moments like that. He returned to the BMW and sat sideways in the driver's seat, with one foot still in the sand. His hands were shaking. He looked at them with irritation, as if they were letting him down in public. He needed to think. Unfortunately, Graham's idea of thinking usually involved taking some kind of substance to make the inside of his head less available to him. He reached into the back seat, pulled the holdall forward, and unzipped it. Inside was a bag of grass. The sight of it inside steadied him in a stupid way. It belonged to the old world, the real world. The world of favors, debts, parties, weddings, motorway services, men like Kev. He took it out and rolled a fat one with fingers that wouldn't quite do as they were told. He spilled some on his trousers. "Brilliant," he muttered. He lit it with the Zippo and dragged in smoke until his chest hurt. The first lungful calmed him. The second made the crater seem slightly farther away. The third allowed him, briefly, to believe that there might still be some ordinary explanation. Drugs, stroke, dream, gas leak, breakdown, psychotic episode, something with a name, something doctors could write on a form. Then something grey-green slid through the open passenger window. It came quietly. That was the worst part. No shriek, no warning, just a wet, muscular silence. It wrapped around the handle of the suitcase on the back seat. Graham caught sight of it out of the corner of his eye. For half a second, his brain refused the image. It was like a vine, but not a vine. Like a tongue, but too long. Like a piece of intestine that had learned to want things. Then it pulled. The suitcase shot across the seat towards the window. "Oi!" Graham grabbed the handle. The thing yanked back, dragging him across the center console until his ribs struck the gear stick and his shoulder cracked against the doorframe. The handle tore free from his grip. Graham fell back into the driver's seat, clutching his bruised hand. The suitcase vanished outside. "No!" He scrambled out after it. It would be nice to say he was thinking of Kev, or survival, or the possibility that whatever had taken the case might take him too. He was not. There were people back home who would be very upset about him losing the contents of its false bottom. The suitcase bumped across the black sand towards the crater, dragged by a tendril as thick as his wrist. More were lifting over the rim now, grey-green and slick with ochre fluid. Graham caught it 20 feet from the edge. The tendril snapped tight and pulled him off his feet. Black sand filled his mouth. His heels carved 2 useless lines behind him as the crater edge came closer. The case tore open. Bags spilled across the sand. One white packet split and scattered powder over the black ground like flour. His hand struck metal, a tire iron half buried in the sand. Graham grabbed it and swung. Again, again. Grey-green flesh split. Ochre fluid splashed his shirt and face. The tendril tightened once, then went slack. Graham rolled away, coughing. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the rim of the crater came alive. Dozens of tendrils rose from the dark, then hundreds, moving like grass underwater. Graham got to his feet. Oh, come on. He ran between the wrecks, slipping and stumbling. A tendril tore his jacket. Another slapped the BMW and left a smear across the bonnet. They were not fast in the ordinary sense. They did not have to be. They knew the spaces between the dead cars. Graham did not. Ahead, on a shallow slope pointing towards the crater, a rusted flatbed lorry. Rows of metal cylinders chained to its back. Propane. Flammable gas. Graham saw the lettering. It was not a plan so much as panic finding an object. He hauled himself onto the flatbed as the tendrils reached it. One wrapped around his throat. Graham jammed the tire iron between the thing and his neck before it could close fully. Sparks burst behind his eyes. Somewhere behind him, absurdly calm, the sat-nav said, "Recalculating." His free hand found a cylinder valve and twisted. Gas hissed. He opened a second valve, then dug in his pocket for the Zippo. The flame looked tiny, human, stupid. He held it to the escaping gas. A blue flame punched outward. The tendril recoiled from his throat. Graham fell coughing as the jet roared across the flatbed. Another leaking valve caught, then another. He scrambled through the missing rear window of the cab, dropped onto the passenger seat. He yanked at the handbrake, which was stiff with rust. "Come on!" He hauled at it with both hands. The lever dropped. The lorry moved. Only an inch at first. Then gravity took it. Graham jumped. His foot caught the step, and he hit the ground hard, rolling clear as the flatbed careered towards the crater. For a heartbeat, it hung at the rim. Graham spat black sand from his mouth. "Open wide, motherfucker." The lorry tipped and vanished. There was a pause. Then something ruptured below. The world punched him flat. The blast was not a neat orange film explosion. It was a brutal tearing of heat and pressure. Dead cars shifted. Windows shattered. The ground kicked beneath him. Something struck the side of his head and filled his vision with white. When he came back to himself, something wet was falling. Pieces of tendril, grey-green jelly, ochre fluid in ropes and splashes. Graham turned his head and vomited. From deep inside the crater came a sucking moan. Graham pushed himself upright. His throat burned. One eye was swelling. Blood ran from his ear, but the tendrils around the rim were severed and twitching. The crater edge burned. For one ridiculous moment, Graham laughed. Not because it was funny, because there was nowhere else for the terror to go. "You should have taken the motorway," he said. Then the sat-nav spoke. "Recalculating." Graham turned. The BMW was still there, filthy and dented, driver's door open, phone glowing on the dashboard. "Please drive to highlighted route." "No, fuck you," Graham said. He staggered towards the car. "Absolutely fucking not." He reached inside, ripped the phone out, and stumbled back to the edge of the crater, ready to hurl it into the depths. The screen was black, the scarlet line glowing on it. Graham noticed the destination had changed. It was no longer the accursed city of Guidar. It was the crater. More precisely, it was inside it. A tendril slipped over the lip and wrapped around his ankle. He looked down. "Oh no," he said, very softly. Then it pulled. Graham disappeared into the crater. The phone flew from his hand and landed in the sand. The sat-nav's voice hung in the still air. You have now arrived at your destination. Terry Channing was making puttanesca when Charlie rang. She was watching something on her phone which was propped against the toaster while she stirred the sauce. Garlic, chili, anchovies, tomatoes. Proper food in an ordinary kitchen. She picked up the phone. No, she said. I haven't heard from Graham. She listened, frowned, and added more salt. He didn't turn up at all? Steam clouded the kitchen window. Outside, Cardiff was grey and wet and reassuringly dull. Well, you know Graham, she said. He probably met some nice young man at the services and is currently doing the wheelbarrow in a travel lodge somewhere north of Exeter. Charlie said something that made her laugh. No, I'm sure he's fine. He'll turn up with some ridiculous story. He always does. She tasted the sauce from her little finger. He did send me a link yesterday, actually. Some sat-nav thing. Said Kev had sent it to him. Honestly, she said, men and their gadgets. I'll give it a go when I drive up to Liverpool next week. She pressed the download button. The bar flashed straight to 100%. Terry didn't notice. She was draining the pasta. Then a woman's voice spoke from the phone. Warm, courteous, far too familiar. Good morning, Terry.